You've been lying here for a while now. Maybe your eyes are closed. Maybe they're open, looking at the ceiling or the pale glow of a screen. Either way, something in you is moving when you want it to be still. A thought circles back, a feeling you can't name. The body shifts, searching for comfort that doesn't come. This restlessness is not new. It's the same restlessness that lived inside a young man 25 centuries ago, though he had every reason to feel at peace. His name was Siddhartha, and he had been raised inside walls built specifically to keep discomfort out. Not prison walls, walls of pleasure, walls of distraction. His father had constructed an entire world designed to hold only beauty, only youth, only celebration. Musicians played in the courtyards. Dancers moved through the gardens. The food was abundant. The conversation was light. Everything that might disturb the mind had been carefully removed. And yet, there was something underneath. A question that wouldn't settle. Not loud, not urgent. Just there, like a stone in the shoe you can't quite locate. You might know this feeling. The sense that something is being avoided, even when you can't say what it is. The way a room can feel too bright, and you realize it's because no shadows are allowed. Siddhartha lived in that brightness, and for a long time it worked. The mind can be occupied, it can be fed sensation after sensation until it stops asking. But the mind is also like water, it finds the cracks. One day he left the palace grounds. The texts say he went out through the gates in a chariot, but the details matter less than what happened, what he saw. Or rather, what he finally allowed himself to see. The first sight was an old person, skin folded and thin, body bent, moving slowly, carefully, as if each step required negotiation. Siddhartha had never seen this before. He asked his attendant what he was looking at. The attendant said, "This is aging. This happens to everyone, to you, to me, to all of us." The water found a crack. He returned to the palace, but the question had entered. A few days later, he went out again. This time he saw someone who was sick, lying by the road, body racked with pain, face pale and drawn. Again he asked. Again the answer came. This is illness. This too happens. No one is exempt. The mind that had been so carefully kept in comfort now had nowhere to rest. Because once you see what's been hidden, you can't unsee it. You can only pretend. And pretending takes effort. It makes the restlessness worse. The third time he went out, he saw a corpse being carried to the burning grounds. A body that had been a person, now still, now being prepared for fire. The attendant didn't need to explain. Siddhartha understood. This is death. This is where it all goes. You can feel your own breath right now, if you bring attention to it. The rise and fall of the chest. The coolness at the nostrils. The breath is always here, always moving, always reminding you that this body is alive. And also that it won't always be. Siddhartha sat with what he had seen. He didn't run from it, though he could have. He could have returned to the palace and doubled down on distraction. More music, more wine, more anything to cover the crack. But the mind, once it sees clearly, doesn't want to go back to sleep. It wants to understand. The fourth sight was different. He saw a wandering ascetic. Someone who had left the household life, who wore simple robes, who walked quietly with a bowl for alms. The ascetic's face was calm, not the manufactured calm of someone pretending. The calm of someone who had stopped running. Siddhartha looked at this person and felt something shift. Not an answer, a direction. The restlessness he'd been carrying wasn't a flaw. It was a response. A truthful response to a life built on avoidance. And if that was true, then maybe the way forward wasn't to eliminate the restlessness, but to turn toward what it was pointing at. The mind is like water. It flows toward truth, even when truth is difficult. It finds the cracks in our carefully constructed comfort. And when it does, we have a choice. We can try to seal the cracks, or we can follow the water and see where it goes. Right now, your breath is moving. In and out, without effort, without needing your permission. You can feel it if you let yourself. There was a prince who lived inside walls so high he never thought to wonder what lay beyond them. His father had built those walls with care. Gardens bloomed inside. Musicians played. Silk hung from every doorway. The prince moved through rooms designed to hold only beauty, only pleasure, only the carefully arranged surfaces of a life without friction. He was like a bird raised in a gilded cage who has never seen the sky. Not because the cage was locked, but because he had never thought to test the bars. This is where most of us live, not in palaces, but in arrangements. We organize our days to avoid certain sights. We choose routes that bypass the hospital, the shelter, the corner where someone sits asking for change. We scroll past news that makes the chest tighten. We change the subject when a friend mentions their grief. We have learned, without deciding to learn it, how to move through the world touching only the smooth parts. The comfort is real. The avoidance is real. What we forget is that the walls we build to keep discomfort out also keep us in. The prince left the palace one day not in rebellion, just curiosity. And he saw an old man, body bent, skin loose over bone. He saw someone sick, shaking with fever. He saw a corpse being carried to the burning ground. He saw a wanderer who had left everything behind to seek something the prince could not yet name. These were not ideas. They were sights, direct, undeniable. And they changed everything. Not because he learned a fact he didn't know. Everyone knows people grow old. Everyone knows bodies fail. But knowing in the abstract and seeing with your own eyes are not the same. One you can file away. The other lands in the body and will not leave. A life of ease is not a life awake. Ease can be a kind of forgetting. Not the ease that comes after clear seeing, but the ease we construct by narrowing the view. We make our world smaller and call it peace. We avoid the difficult and call it wisdom. We turn away from what disturbs us and believe we have found balance. But the bird in the gilded cage, no matter how comfortable, has never stretched its wings against the wind. It does not know what it is built for. It mistakes the limits of the cage for the limits of the world. You do not need to leave a palace. You do not need to seek out suffering. It is already here, woven into every ordinary day. The question is whether you let yourself see it. Notice one thing today you usually avoid looking at. Not to punish yourself, not to become overwhelmed, just to see. Maybe it is the face of someone asking for help on the street. You have passed this corner 100 times, eyes forward, pace steady. Today, just for a moment, let your gaze rest. See the person. Not the idea of homelessness, not the swirl of guilt or helplessness, just the fact of a human being sitting there. Maybe it is your own face in the mirror when you are tired. You have learned to glance past it, to move quickly toward the next task. Today, stop. Look at the lines, the heaviness under the eyes, the small signs of a body that does not stay young. Not with judgment, just with honesty. Maybe it is the news you have been avoiding. The headline that makes you want to close the screen. The update from a friend you have not asked about, because you are afraid of what they might say. Let yourself take it in. Not all of it, not the endless scroll, just one thing, just enough to know it is real. This is not about forcing yourself to stare at suffering until you break. It is about noticing where you have built walls without deciding to. It is about testing the bars of the cage and realizing they were never locked. The prince saw what he had been protected from seeing, and it cracked him open. Not into despair, into awakening. Because once you see clearly, you cannot pretend anymore. And once you stop pretending, you can finally begin to live in the world as it actually is. The walls you built were meant to keep you safe, but they also keep you small. And somewhere underneath the comfort, you already know this. You feel the tightness of the space. You sense the sky beyond, even if you have never seen it. There is a story told in the old texts about a young man who left the palace walls and saw four things: an old person, a sick person, a corpse, and finally, a wandering ascetic. These are called the four sights, and they are said to have changed everything for him. But the story is not really about what he saw. It is about what he had not been seeing. He had been living among people who aged, who fell ill, who would one day die. He had been one of them all along. The difference was only this: he had not let it in. We do the same. We see an elderly person walking slowly, hands trembling as they reach for a railing. We see it clearly. We may even feel tenderness. But somewhere beneath the noticing, there is a quiet assumption. That person is old, I am not yet old. As if aging were a category we observe from outside. We see someone's hair thinning, skin loosening, posture shifting. We see it the way we see leaves turning color in autumn, each one on its own schedule. We notice the yellow leaf, the red one, the one still green. But we do not think of ourselves as part of the same tree. We think we are watching from somewhere else. The teaching says all that is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. It does not say all except you. It does not say most things or things you can see happening to others. It says all. The body that grew from an infant's softness into the shape you inhabit now did not stop changing the moment you stopped paying attention. This is not meant to frighten. It is only meant to be seen. If you look at your hands right now, you can see them as they are, not as they were 10 years ago, not as you imagine them staying. Just as they are in this moment, the skin may be smooth or lined. The veins may show more than they once did. The knuckles may have thickened slightly, or the fingers may move with a stiffness that was not there before. You do not have to do anything with this noticing. You do not have to feel sad about it or deny it or make a plan. You only have to see it. When Siddhartha saw the old person, he was not seeing something rare. He was seeing what had always been true. He was seeing his own future written in another's present. And more than that, he was seeing his own present. The process was already underway. It had been underway since birth. We resist this in small ways. We say, I still feel young, as if feeling were a barrier against fact. We say, I'm not there yet, as if there were a fixed point we could avoid crossing. But the leaves do not turn all at once. They turn gradually, cell by cell, and by the time the color is obvious, the change has been happening for weeks. Your body has been changing while you were thinking about other things. It has been shifting in texture, in resilience, in the way it responds to effort and rest. This is not a failure. This is not something you did wrong. It is only what happens to all forms that arise. The practice is simple. Look at your hands. See the shape of them, the color, the small marks and changes. Do not compare them to an earlier version. Do not brace against a future version. Just see what is here. And then, if you are willing, let the seeing widen. Notice that the breath you are taking now is not the same breath you took a moment ago. Notice that the feeling in your chest, your shoulders, your belly, it is not static. It moves, it shifts. Even in stillness, there is change. This is not about becoming morbid. It is about becoming accurate. The four sights did not crush Siddhartha. They woke him. They ended the trance of exemption. He stopped living as if he were outside the process and began to see himself inside it, subject to the same laws as every other form. When you see aging in someone else and feel that flicker of distance, that quiet belief that you are watching from safety, you can pause. You can look at your own hands. You can feel your own breath. You can notice the truth that is already present. You are not separate from this. You are part of the same turning. And when that reality settles, not as a threat, but as a fact, something softens. The clinging to what was loosens. The fear of what will be loses some of its grip. What remains is just this, the body as it is, the breath as it moves, the moment unfolding in its own time. There is a story the Buddha told about his life before awakening. He was a young man named Siddhartha, sheltered in a palace, kept from anything unpleasant. His father wanted him to know only beauty and comfort. But one day, Siddhartha left the palace grounds. He saw an old person, bent and slow. Then someone ill, trembling with fever. Then a corpse being carried to the burning grounds. These were called the four sights, though the fourth was a wandering monk who had chosen to face these truths directly. What changed in that moment was not information. Siddhartha already knew somewhere that bodies age and sicken and die. What changed was that he could no longer pretend his own body was exempt. We carry a quiet belief that this body is ours in a way that makes it permanent. Not in words, but in how we move through the day. We expect it to obey, to stay strong, to look a certain way, to not betray us with pain or fatigue or the small failures that arrive without warning. When it does not cooperate, we feel betrayed, as if a contract has been broken. The Buddha said something direct about this. He said, this body is not yours. It is a condition that has come together, not as punishment, not as philosophy, as fact. A clay pot holds water because its shape allows it. You can carry it from the well, set it in the shade, drink from it for years, it serves. But the pot is made of earth and heat and the hands that formed it. One day a crack appears, not from misuse, just from being what it is. The pot does not fail you. It was always clay. This body is like that. It is made of conditions, food and breath and the cells that divide and repair and eventually slow. It is held together by processes you did not design and cannot supervise. It has never been a possession. It has always been a process. When you place one hand on your chest, you can feel this. Not as an idea, but as movement. The breath comes in without your instruction. It leaves without your permission. The heart beats. The lungs expand. You are not doing this. It is happening. Try it now if you like. One hand flat against your chest. No need to sit up straight or make it formal. Just rest your hand there and feel the rise and fall. The slight pause between breaths. You might notice the urge to control it, to breathe more deeply or more slowly. That urge is the same one that wants the body to be yours. Let the breath move as it moves. Let the body do what it is already doing. You might feel the warmth of your own hand, the pressure of your palm against ribs and muscle, the small shifts as your lungs fill. This is not your breath in the sense of ownership. It is breath moving through a body that is, for now, breathing. Siddhartha saw the old person and realized his own body would age. He saw the sick person and realized his own body would falter. He saw the corpse and realized his own body would stop. These were not distant facts. They were already present, written into the conditions that made his body possible. The clay pot does not crack because it was weak. It cracks because clay, over time, responds to water and air and use. The pot was always going to crack. That is what clay does. Your body will age. It will tire. It will ache in places that did not ache before. It will change shape. It will stop obeying the expectations you once held. Not because you failed it, because it is made of conditions and conditions change. When you rest your hand on your chest and feel the breath, you are feeling those conditions directly. The air entering, the body receiving it, the exchange that keeps you alive happening on its own. You are not in charge of this. You are present for it. This is not loss, this is accuracy. The body is not failing when it ages, it is continuing. A clay pot that has held water for 30 years has done exactly what clay can do. When the crack comes, the pot has not broken a promise. It has completed its nature. You can feel your breath right now. The chest rising, the belly softening. The small pause before the next breath begins. This body, breathing without your management. Let your hand rest there. Feel the movement. Let it be enough that the body is doing this, for now, without needing it to be yours. There is an old story often told about a young prince who left his palace and saw four things: an old person, a sick person, a corpse, and a wandering monk. These four sights changed him. They turned his life in a new direction. But the story is not really about what he saw. It is about what he finally allowed himself to know. We already know these things. We have seen illness. We have heard of death. We pass hospitals and cemeteries. We attend funerals. We nod when someone says life is short, and then we return to our days as if we have 10,000 years ahead of us. This is not ignorance. It is something more subtle. It is a kind of forgetting that happens even while we remember. We hold the fact of death at a distance, like a newspaper article about a faraway place. It is true, we think, but not true here, not true now, not true for me. A candle flame burns steady on a table. The wax beneath it melts slowly, so slowly you do not notice. The flame does not flicker or dim. It gives the same light, but the wax is going. It has always been going. One day, without warning, the flame will go out. Not because something went wrong, because that is what candles do. The teaching from the Zen tradition says the great matter is birth and death. Time passes swiftly. It does not say this to frighten us. It says this because it is true, and because we spend so much energy pretending it is not. Siddhartha saw the four sights and something broke open in him. Not his mind, exactly, something deeper. He could no longer return to the palace and live as if those sights were not real. He could not unsee what he had seen. The comfort of his old life became impossible, not because it was taken from him, but because he could no longer believe in it the same way. What he saw was not new information. It was the end of a long postponement. We postpone in small ways. We say later. We say not yet. We fill our hours with plans that stretch far into the future, as if the future is guaranteed. We argue over small things as if there will always be time to make peace. We wait to say what matters. We wait to live the way we know we should live. And then someone we love is gone. Or we receive news that changes everything. Or we wake one morning and realize how much time has already passed. The postponement ends, but by then something has been lost. The candle does not announce when it will go out. It simply burns, and while it burns, we have a choice. We can pretend the wax will last forever, or we can sit with the flame and let it teach us what it knows. There is a practice, very simple, that brings this teaching close. You sit quietly. You do not need a cushion or a special room. You can sit wherever you are. You breathe in, you breathe out. And then, inwardly, without drama, you say, I too will die. Not someday, not in theory. You, the person reading this, the person breathing right now, you say it again. I too will die. You let the words settle. You do not rush past them. You do not argue with them or push them away. You let them be true. At first, there may be fear. That is natural. Let the fear be there, do not fight it. Just notice it, the way you would notice a sound in another room. It is there, but it does not have to take over. Say it again. I too will die. Feel your breath. Feel your body alive here. Notice that the truth of death does not erase the truth of this moment. It clarifies it. The flame burns. The wax melts. This is not a tragedy. It is simply what is happening. And in seeing it clearly, without turning away, something shifts. The moment becomes more vivid. The people you love become more precious. The small annoyances lose their weight. You do not need to say the words out loud. You do not need to make it into a ritual. You only need to stop postponing. You only need to let the truth be true. Siddhartha left the palace because he could no longer live in a world that pretended. He went looking for something that did not decay. And what he found in the end was not a way to escape death. It was a way to live fully within it. To stop running, to stop pretending, to meet each moment as it is without the burden of denial. The candle will go out, you know this. I know this. We have always known. But knowing and living as if we know are not the same thing. Sit quietly. Say the words. Let them land. Let the silence that follows hold what is true. Not with fear. Not with despair. Just with clarity. Just with breath. Just with this. There is a story about a prince who lived behind walls. Everything he needed was arranged for him. The gardens were perfect. The musicians played at the right hour. No one spoke of illness or aging or death. It was not cruelty that built those walls. It was love, or what his father believed love required. One day the prince left the palace. He saw an old person, bent and slow. Then someone sick, trembling with fever. Then a funeral procession. Then a wanderer who had left everything behind to seek something true. These are called the four sights. They are not metaphors. They happened to a man named Siddhartha before he became the Buddha. But they also happen to us, again and again, in smaller ways. We see something that does not fit the story we have been telling ourselves. A friend becomes ill and we realize health is not guaranteed. Someone we love grows distant and we feel the ground shift. We wake one morning and know quietly that the life we are living is not the one we meant to live. The sight arrives, and then we wait for the right time. We wait for certainty. We wait for someone to tell us it is allowed. A river that changes course when the old bed no longer serves does not ask permission. It moves when the conditions are right. The water finds the path of least resistance, not because it is weak, but because it follows what is true. It does not announce the change. It simply flows. The teaching says the path is walked by those who take the first step, not by those who wait for certainty. This is not about courage in the loud sense. It is about noticing what is already pulling at you and letting your feet follow. Siddhartha did not have a plan when he left the palace. He did not know what he would find. He only knew he could not stay inside walls that no longer held the truth. We think the first step must be large. We think it must be visible. But the first step is often quiet. It is choosing one small thing today that aligns with what matters most to you. Not tomorrow. Not when things settle. today, in the middle of everything else, this is not about fixing your whole life at once. It is about turning, just slightly, toward what feels true. Maybe it is sitting still for 5 minutes when the house is loud. Maybe it is saying no to something that drains you, even though saying no feels strange. Maybe it is reaching out to someone you have been avoiding, or stepping back from someone who pulls you under. The step does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be honest. The river does not change course all at once. First, there is a small channel, barely visible. The water tests it. A little flows through, then more. Over time, the new path deepens, the old bed dries. What seemed impossible becomes the way things are. But it begins with the first trickle, the first movement toward what the water knows it must do. We wait because we think we need permission. We think someone wiser must tell us it is time. But the 4 sights do not come with instructions. They come as disruption. They show you what you have been avoiding. And then they leave you alone with the question, what will you do now? Siddhartha could have returned to the palace. He could have decided the sights were too much, the world too hard, the search too uncertain. No one would have blamed him. But he took the step. Not because he was sure, because he could no longer pretend he had not seen what he had seen. You have seen something too. Maybe it was years ago. Maybe it was this morning. Something that showed you the life you are living and the life you know is possible are not the same. The gap between them is not a failure. It is an invitation. But invitations do not wait forever. Choose one small thing today, not the whole path, just the first step. Let it be simple. Let it be true. The rest will follow or it will not, but you will have moved. And movement, even slight movement, changes everything. The possibility is here, not later. Now. Before Siddhartha left the palace, he lived inside a world built to keep certain things out. His father had arranged it that way. High walls, curated gardens, faces chosen for their youth and health. Everything designed to hold a single story in place, that life could stay as it was, that comfort could be made permanent, that nothing had to change. And then one day, he saw an old person, then someone sick, then a corpse being carried through the street. Not ideas about these things, the things themselves. The story he had been living inside began to crack. A snake does not shed its skin because it decides to improve itself. It sheds because the old skin no longer fits. The body has grown, and what once protected now constricts. If the snake clings to the old skin, it cannot move forward. It cannot breathe fully. The shedding is not a loss. It is the only way the snake continues to live. We do this too. We build a version of how things are supposed to be, and then we hold it in place long after it stops fitting. We grip the story of who we were 5 years ago. We insist that a relationship must look the way it did when it began. We carry an image of ourselves that no longer matches what we see in the mirror or feel in our chest when we wake up. This is craving in its quietest form. Not always the loud wanting of more. Sometimes it is the silent refusal to let something finish. The belief that if we hold tightly enough, we can stop time, we can keep the skin from splitting. But the body grows anyway, life moves. And the tightness we mistake for safety becomes the thing that hurts. When Siddhartha saw those 4 sights, he was not learning something new. He was seeing what had always been true. Old age, sickness, death, and the possibility of peace in the face of all 3. These were not ideas his father could wall out forever. They were the conditions of being alive. What changed was not the world. It was his willingness to stop pretending. Letting go is not loss. It is the end of carrying what was never yours. The old skin was never you. It was a covering. Useful for a time, necessary even. But when it no longer fits, holding on to it does not preserve who you are. It prevents you from becoming what you already are underneath. This does not mean throwing everything away. It does not mean rejecting the past or deciding that what mattered before no longer matters. The snake does not hate the skin it sheds. It simply stops insisting that the skin must stay. You can feel the difference in your own hands. Right now, if you want, pick something small. A pen, a cup, a stone. Hold it the way you normally hold things you do not want to lose. Notice the grip, the tension in the fingers, the way the muscles in your hand and forearm tighten to keep the object secure. Now hold it differently. Let it rest in your open palm. You are still holding it. It has not fallen. But the quality of the holding has changed. There is contact without clinging, presence without pressure. This is what the practice asks. Not that you drop everything. Just that you notice the difference between holding and gripping, between being with something and trying to stop it from changing. You might try this with a thought today, a small one. Not the biggest fear or the oldest wound, just a passing opinion about how your day should go, or a preference about how someone else should behave. Hold it lightly. Let it sit in your awareness the way the object sits in your open hand. See if you can be with it without needing it to stay exactly as it is. The snake does not plan the shedding. It does not wait until it feels ready. The skin splits when the body has grown enough. And then the snake moves forward, leaving the old form behind. Not because the old form was wrong, because it was finished. Siddhartha walked out of the palace because the walls could no longer hold the truth out. He had seen what he had seen. And once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. You can only decide whether to keep gripping the story that no longer fits or to let it fall away. The practice is small. The principle is not. Hold something lightly today that you usually grip tightly, not forever, just once. Just long enough to feel what happens when you stop insisting that it stay. There is a story told in the old texts about a young man who left his father's palace and saw 4 things he had never seen before. An old person, a sick person, a dead body, and someone walking calmly through it all. These were not ideas he encountered. They were sights, direct, unavoidable, and everything changed. Not because he learned something new, but because he could no longer pretend he didn't know what he already knew. The body ages, it sickens, it ends. And no one had told him what to do with that. We spend so much of our lives building a kind of certainty around ourselves. We make plans. We imagine how things will go. We rehearse conversations that haven't happened yet. We try to see around corners. And when we can't, we freeze. Or we fill the space with noise, distraction, business, anything to avoid the feeling of standing at the edge of something we cannot map. It's like walking into fog where each step reveals only the next. You cannot see the destination. You cannot see the whole path. You can only see what is directly in front of you, and that feels unbearable, because we have been taught that not knowing is dangerous. That uncertainty is a problem to solve. That if we just think hard enough, plan well enough, we can eliminate the fog entirely. But the fog does not clear because we wish it to. And Siddhartha, standing outside the palace walls, did not suddenly receive a map. He saw what was true, and he did not look away. There is a teaching that appears again and again in the early texts, though it is easy to miss. The path unfolds beneath the feet of those who walk it. Not before, not in advance. Beneath, you do not need to see the whole road. You do not need to know what comes next. You only need to take the step that is here. This is not faith in the sense of blind belief. It is trust in a different kind of knowing. The kind that comes from moving, not from standing still and trying to figure it all out. When you walk into fog where each step reveals the next, you learn something the mind cannot teach you from a distance. You learn that the ground holds you, that your body knows how to balance, that you can move without certainty and still move well. The breath is like this. You do not know when the next breath will come. You do not control it in the way you think you do. And yet it arrives. Again and again. You can feel it now if you let yourself, the air moving in, the slight pause, the air moving out. You do not need to know what comes next. Not in this breath, not in the next moment, not in the life you are living. You can breathe and say it quietly, just once. I do not need to know what comes next. Not as a mantra to repeat endlessly, just as a single acknowledgement, a softening. And then you breathe again. Siddhartha did not leave the palace because he had answers. He left because he could no longer live inside a question he was pretending not to ask. And what he found was not certainty. He found a willingness to meet what was there. The old person was not a symbol. The sick person was not a lesson. The dead body was not a teaching device. They were real. And he let them be real. He did not turn away. He did not explain them away. He did not rush to make them mean something comfortable. He stood in the presence of what he did not want to see, and he did not collapse. That is equanimity, not indifference, not detachment in the sense of coldness, but a kind of steadiness that does not require the world to be other than it is. You are walking into fog where each step reveals the next. You have always been walking this way. The only difference now is that you are noticing. You do not need to know what comes next. You only need to be here for this, the breath, the ground, the step, and the fog does not feel so heavy when you stop asking it to clear. It is just fog, and you are just walking, and that is enough. The story of Siddhartha and the four sights is not just something that happened long ago to someone else. It happens whenever we stop pretending, whenever we let ourselves see what has always been there. The old person walking slowly, the body in pain, the funeral procession, the quiet face of someone who has stopped running. These sights changed everything for Siddhartha because he allowed them to land. He did not look away. He did not fill the space with explanations or distractions. He stood there and let the truth of impermanence touch him. And that touch was not violent. It was tender. Impermanence is often spoken of as something harsh, something to brace against. But when we meet it directly, without the stories we tell about it, it arrives more like a whisper, like the way leaves fall, like the way breath moves through the body and then releases. Nothing stays. And because nothing stays, we do not have to hold so tightly. This is not a teaching that asks us to give up caring. It asks us to care without clinging, to love without demanding that what we love remain frozen in place, to be present for this moment, knowing it will not last, and to meet the next moment with the same openness. Siddhartha saw suffering, and he did not turn it into a problem to solve with force. He turned toward it. He sat with it. He walked into the forest and spent years learning to be still enough to see clearly. And what he found was not an escape from impermanence, but a way to live inside it without fear. The path he walked is still here. It has not disappeared. It does not require anything you do not already have. It begins with noticing, with seeing what is actually present, rather than what you wish were present, with feeling the breath as it is, not as you think it should be, with acknowledging the ache in the chest, the tightness in the shoulders, the restlessness in the mind. You do not have to fix any of it right now. You only have to see it, and in the seeing something softens, not always immediately, not always completely, but over time, with patience, the grip loosens. The mind learns that it does not have to solve everything. The heart learns that it can hold sorrow and stillness at the same time. This is what the four sights opened in Siddhartha. Not despair, but clarity. Not hopelessness, but direction. He saw that life includes loss, and he decided to find out if there was a way to meet that loss without being destroyed by it. And he found that there was. The teachings he left behind are not monuments. They are invitations. They ask us to return, again and again, to the simplicity of this breath, this step, this moment of awareness. They remind us that we do not have to wait for perfect conditions to begin. We do not have to become someone else first. We can start from exactly where we are, with whatever confusion is present, with whatever pain is present, with whatever small willingness we can find to stop, to breathe, to notice. The path does not demand that we walk it all at once. It only asks that we take the next step, and then the next, and that we do so with as much gentleness as we can manage. There will be days when the mind is loud and the body is restless. There will be moments when it feels like nothing is working. This is part of the path too. Not a sign of failure, but a sign of being human, of walking the same ground that every practitioner has walked. And on those days we return. We come back to the breath. We come back to the body. We come back to the simple fact of being here, alive, aware. This is enough. Siddhartha's story does not end with him. It continues in every person who chooses to see clearly, in every moment of honest attention, in every breath taken with awareness. If you would like to continue, there are other teachings waiting, other threads of this same path, but there is no hurry. You can rest here for as long as you need. The teachings will still be there when you are ready. For now, let yourself simply be. Let the breath move, let the body settle. Let the mind rest in whatever quiet it can find. Nothing more is needed.